Hey everyone, this week we are going to be starting our unit on argument, and we're going to be starting today with fact versus opinion. So you're going to want to make sure that you have a pen or pencil and your paper and notebook, just like we normally do for class, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So the reason we are starting with fact and opinion, which is a skill that a lot of us have, telling the difference between fact and opinion, is because for argument, there is a lot that we need to be able to do to make sure that we are reading appropriately for our GED test. And the GED skill that we're going to be practicing today has a lot to do with arguing. So the skill we're working on is the ability to evaluate the relevance and sufficiency of evidence offered in support of a claim. So what does this really mean? It means that we need to be able to read a sentence or an example or a piece of evidence and decide whether or not that piece of evidence does a great job of supporting an idea or doesn't do a really great job. So think about some of the murder mystery shows that we see on TV. Shows like NCIS, Law and Order, CSI, shows that ask us to solve a mystery or solve a murder. And in order to do that, there needs to be evidence. And the job on that show is to be able to decide if the evidence actually supports the idea that someone committed a crime. And that's kind of what we're going to be leading up to, is deciding whether or not our evidence actually supports our idea. But in order to get there, we need to start with fact versus opinion. So today's lesson, we're going to be able to focus on defining fact and opinion. So we're going to have some good definitions for them. And we're going to work on telling the difference between fact and opinion. So if we read a sentence or if we read a paragraph, we're going to work on making sure that we can tell the difference between fact and opinion and be able to point out the differences between them. So we have 3 vocabulary words that we're going to be starting with today. We are going to work on fact, opinion, and bias. So what I want you to do is pause the video here and think for yourself, what do you have for the definition of fact, opinion, and bias? Once you've paused the video, I want you to kind of write down your ideas that you have for fact, opinion, and bias before we get going with them. Now, we are going to do fact and opinion in just a minute, but we're going to work with bias first. So bias might be a word that you have heard in the news, or you've read it in the paper, or something that you've seen recently. It's been talked about a lot, and it's something that we should really know what it is. So we are going to say that for us, bias is a prejudiced view of a person, place, thing, or idea. So what does that really mean? A prejudiced view of a person, place, thing, or idea. So we want to first start by talking about the word prejudiced here. Prejudice literally means to prejudge. So if you are prejudging something or someone, it means that you are coming up with an opinion or an idea about that person, place, thing, or idea without really having any good context, meaning that you're just kind of saying it because maybe you heard someone else say it or you saw it and immediately thought it was true. That's a bias. So that might be something, I've heard this a lot with food actually, that someone might say, oh, I hate French food, and they've never tried French food. Or, oh, I love Spanish food, but they've never tried Spanish food before. So we're coming up with a judgment about something before you've interacted with it at all. And there are a couple of things that we want to keep in mind when we are talking about bias. The first thing we want to keep in mind is that all people have bias. Everybody has it. We have ideas that we just identify with really quickly or easily, things that we believe to be true, and those can be our biases. The other thing that we want to remember is that bias can be good or bad. What I mean by that is that you can have a bias that is towards something, meaning that you see it as good all the time, or you can have a bias that is against something, meaning that you see it as something bad all the time. So like a good bias that I have is that when a new student enters my class, I automatically assume they're going to be a great student and they're going to have a really successful movement through my class. I automatically assume that. That's a bias. I don't really know that person who's entering my class yet. and I automatically think something good of them. Bias that can be negative can be steered towards lots of things like race, gender, ethnicity, sex, anything like that can lead to negative biases where we're viewing something as bad without ever having interacted with it before. So we're going to come back to this idea of bias when we talk a little bit more about opinion. But before we do that, let's go ahead and build our definitions for what fact and opinion mean. And we're going to do that starting with what a fact is. So what is a fact? When we talk about a fact, we are going to say that our definition is that a fact is a statement that can be verified or checked with a piece of evidence. So what we're really trying to say here is that if you have a fact, you need to be proving it. It needs to be proven true or false. So when we talk about the words verify, check, and prove, they all mean similar things. They're synonyms to one another, which means that they have similar definitions. So in order for something to be a fact, you have to be able to prove it to me. You have to be able to verify it or check it somewhere. So when we are talking about these, facts can be proven true or they can be proven false. And usually when we talk about them, we prove them to be true when we're doing research. Facts contain information that does not tell what the author thinks or feels about a subject. So there are no personal feelings when we talk about facts. So one example that I can come up with has to do with like the sky outside. I can say that on a cloudless day, the sky is blue. This is a fact because I can prove it. I can go outside and see that the sky is blue. I'm not telling you how I really feel about the sky being blue, but I'm just saying that on a cloudless day, the sky is blue. So there are no personal feelings involved and I can prove it, which makes it a fact. Now, when we talk about facts, how do we know it's a fact? This can be something that can be a little bit tricky to determine. So we have 3 questions that we can use to determine whether or not something is a fact. And we want to ask these questions as we're reading. So the first question we ask here, number 1, is can the statement be proved or demonstrated to be true? So really what we're asking is, can I prove it? So this is just kind of our basic catch-all question. Can I prove this to be true? Is it something that I know, or is this something that I can find information to check somewhere? Our second question we ask ourselves has to do with visual proof. Can the statement be observed in practice or operation? Can you see it happen? So really what these boils down to is, can I see it? My example from the last slide where we said that on a cloudless day, the sky is blue, that is a fact that we can prove by looking outside. We can prove that fact, and we can prove it through observation, which just means it is something that we see. So it can be something observed in practice, meaning that you see it happening or you see it working, or in operation. So when things are operating, we want to think like a machine. That's what we talk about when we talk about operations. So we say, number 1, can I prove it? And number 2, can I see it? The third question that we want to ask ourselves to dig a little deeper is, can the statement be verified by witnesses, manuscripts, or documents? So this is just another way of saying, can I find proof? And when we talk about finding proof, really what we're looking for is there something that I can physically point to say that my fact is a true fact? So if you have books, or if you have people that were actually there, or if you have the documents that were proving something, those count as proof. So we've got these 3 questions that we can be asking ourselves as we are reading. Can I prove it? Can I see it? And can I find proof? And really what these boil down to is that you need to prove it. If you feel that something is a fact, you need to be able to prove that it is a fact. And that proof has to come from somewhere. So if you can find the proof, that's how we know it's a fact. So how do we know that these are facts? I came up with a couple of sentences that I think are facts, and we're going to walk through how we decide whether or not they are facts using those 3 questions from before. Can I prove it? Can I see it? Where's the proof? So I'm going to put those questions right here. Can I prove it? Can I see it? Where is the proof? So we're going to look at my 3 factual statements and see if they actually do count as facts. So my first one is the sentence right here. My phone payment is $70 per month. So is this a fact? So when I'm reading this, I'm thinking to myself, okay, first things first, can I prove it? What can I do to prove that my phone payment is $70 per month? Well, I know that I get a bill, which includes a statement about how much usage I had, how many text messages I had, how many calls, and it also includes how much I pay. I may also be able to use something like my checkbook, like my proof of sale. So my proof of payment could also count here. And when I think about these are my proofs. Can I see it? Well, I could see the bill. I guess that might count, but I don't think this one is a really good question. Where is the proof? Well, the proof is in my bill, it's in my statement, and it's in my proof of payment there. So what we're trying to say here is that I can prove it. I can prove this by looking at my bill, which makes it a fact. How about my second sentence here? Canadians say sorry so much that a law was passed in 2009 declaring that an apology can't be used as evidence of admission of guilt. So what this is really saying to me is that in Canada, people say sorry so often that in court, it no longer acts as an admission of guilt. It's just an apology. So I need to prove that this is a fact. How do I prove that this is a fact? Well, since it's a law, I'm thinking maybe I can find a law book. Maybe I can talk to an expert. I'm thinking that I could probably look this up and find that information. So that proves to me that I can verify this by looking into Canada's laws so that this is in fact a fact. How about my last one? The tallest building in the world is the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. Now, I think I probably have not said that correctly, but what we're looking for is more, is this a fact? So can I prove it? What are some ways that I could prove that this is the tallest building in Dubai? Well, I think I might be able to find proof. Maybe I can look for measurements. Maybe I can look for world records. And if I could, I might be able to just go see it, right? I may be able to go look at it and prove it through looking at something. So I can prove it by measuring the building, by seeing it, by looking it up. So all of these count as facts because they're things that I can prove. I can prove them in some way, shape, or form, which makes them a fact. Now, our other word that we talked about is opinion. What is an opinion? So for our definition of opinion, we are going to say that it is a statement that expresses a writer's feelings, attitudes, or beliefs. And these are neither true nor false. So what this means is that opinions are purely personal. They change from person to person, and everyone is going to have their own opinion, whether it's about what food tastes the best to them, what TV shows they like best, where they like to go on vacation. Those are all opinions because they're all personal. Now, if we compare that to a fact, we said that facts are things that need to have proof. We have to be able to prove it. Well, since opinions just reflect my beliefs or attitudes about something, I can't prove them. So they never are going to count as a fact. We may have opinions that are based in fact, meaning that you came to that conclusion by using facts, but it does not mean that your opinion is a fact. It just means that you did really good research and came to that opinion from facts. And what we want to keep in mind here is that opinions are neither true or false. So this idea here is just really important for us to remember that opinions are entirely personal, that they are going to change from person to person, and that facts have to be proven. You got to be able to prove it. And we're going to come back to this idea as you do the homework today. So there are three types of opinions that we are going to be using and talking about, and we're going to kind of go through what each of them are going to look like. So the first type of opinion is a position on an issue, a position on an issue. So issues are things that matter to us, things like politics, things like education, healthcare, finance. Those are things that are issues, things that we feel passionately about. And the position that you take is just your personal opinion about those issues. So the question we would ask for these are, what does someone believe about an issue? So what are your personal views on education? What are your personal views on finances? What are your personal views on politics? Those things are all positions on issues. And when we talk about these really work a lot with the news. So a lot of the major news stations talk about different politicians and their political viewpoints. Those are just positions on issues. And we can't treat them as fact because they are personal opinions. So this is a really important type of opinion that we really want to remember. So I'm going to stick some stars next to it because this is one that we see quite often with our GED skills. So it's really important that we kind of be able to identify a position on an issue because this is a GED reading skill heavy set. Our second type of opinion that we look at are predictions about the future. And the reason that these count as opinions is because the future hasn't happened yet. So we have absolutely no way of knowing what will happen. So really a good way to think about this is that when you see this word will, it means that something is going to happen in the future. And we treat those as opinions because there's no way to prove them. We don't see these very often, so I'm not going to stick any stars next to them. The last type of opinion that we talk about is an evaluation of people, places, and things. Now, personally, these are the ones that we make most often. So I'm going to stick a star next to these because these are also just as important, and they are GED relevant as well. So these are just as important as our first one. Now, when we talk about evaluating people, places, and things, what we're really trying to get at is what you personally believe about a person, place, thing, or idea. So you want to think about these as reviews. So imagine that you've eaten at a new Thai restaurant in town and you think to yourself, wow, this is the best Thai restaurant in town. That is your personal evaluation of the place that you just ate at, and it is an opinion. You may feel this way about something, but there's no way for you to actually prove that. And the same thing happens when we talk about people, places, things, and ideas. If it's your personal understanding or your personal belief about something, it's an evaluation of an opinion. So our three types of opinions here, we see them all over the place and we use them quite frequently. The key takeaway here, what we really want to remember is that when you are working and reading for your GED test and doing GED readings, the ideas of positions on issues and evaluations of people, places, and things are going to be the most common types of opinions that you see. So our next idea here brings us to, how do we know it's an opinion? How do we figure out that we are looking at an opinion and not something else? Well, when we looked at facts, there were three questions that we asked ourselves. When we're looking for opinions, what we're looking for is word choice. So if you haven't already, you want to make sure that you have worked through the lesson on author's point of view that talks about connotation, denotation, and word choice. That's going to really help you work with this lesson. So when we talk about word choice, there are a couple of types of words that clue you in that you are looking at an opinion. So the first type of word that we look at is a biased word. So these are words that show our bias or our prejudiced beliefs about something. And the 6 most common words that we have are bad, worse, and worst, good, better, and best. And what we want to remember is that when we use these words, they're all about number. So the words bad and good deal with one person. So you can have a good dog or a bad dog. When you deal with worse or better, you are dealing with two things or two people or places. So this vacation home is better than that vacation home or worse than that vacation home. And then when you deal with worst and best, these deal with 3 or more things or people or places. So you might say something like, this is the worst restaurant we've ever been in. So you're comparing it to everything else. So these 6 words are a really good indicator that you are dealing with an opinion, because when you say something is the best, it's totally up to you. There's no way to really prove that. The other way that we tell something is an opinion is with qualifier words. And these qualifier words can be adjectives or adverbs. So when we talk about an adjective, it is a word that describes a noun or pronoun. So what this really means is that it describes to you a person, place, thing, or idea. So a good example of an adjective might be saying something like, you have a lovely home. I am describing your home by using an adjective. Now, adverbs are words that describe verbs, like it says in its name, adjectives, and I'm just going to abbreviate by writing ADJ, and other adverbs. And what these do is they tell us all about how, when, where, or why you do an action. So I'm just going to write that they describe actions. Now they do a little bit more than this, but for right now, we're just going to say that they describe actions. So I might use something like, I drive fast. Fast describes how I drive, which makes it an adverb. So when we look at the words that we have on our list here, words like all, likely, might, and possibly, all of these are types of qualifier words, but the one that I really want you to focus on is this word should. Whenever you see the word should, it is guaranteed that you are looking at an opinion. So just kind of keep this in mind. Just like when we talk about transition words, sometimes we have other words that can be good clue words for us. So should is definitely a good clue word to tell us that we are looking at an opinion. So let's do a little bit of practice and see if we can explain why something is an opinion. So I kind of took my fact sentences and rewrote them a little bit. My first one is that my phone bill is ridiculously expensive. How do I know that this is an opinion and not a fact? Well, I want to be looking and I want to ask myself, can I prove this or is it personal? So can I prove it or is it personal? We know that when we talk about being able to prove something, we know that that has to be a fact, and that if it's personal, then it is an opinion, like my personal opinion. So when I read the sentence, my phone bill is ridiculously expensive, I think that this is my personal view. And there are a couple of clue phrases that kind of tell me that. And one of those ideas is ridiculously expensive. It describes to me how I feel about that phone bill. And there's no way to prove it. This is entirely personal. I can't prove that it's ridiculously expensive. I just feel that way about it. How about my second sentence? All Canadians are polite. Well, when I read this, there are a couple of things that I see. First is this word all. All is usually an opinion word, excuse me. And if we look back at the slide before this, we'll see that all is one of those qualifier words. And I don't think that this sounds really true to me. All Canadians are polite. That sounds like it's someone's personal opinion. This is my evaluation of a group of people, and there's no way that I can prove it. All right, my last one. The view from Burj Khalifa is beautiful. Again, that's only one word that is really kind of challenging me here, and it's this word beautiful. Beautiful shows me that this is a personal idea. It's my idea about it. Not everyone may look at it and say it's beautiful. I can't prove this to anyone. So what we want to remember and what we really want to take away from this is that if you can prove it, then you are looking at a fact. If it is personal and you cannot prove it, then what you're looking at is an opinion. So this week, when we are looking at our practices, we're going to be looking at identifying fact versus an opinion and looking at how we would use them to help us understand an argument. So really what I want you to take away from this is that facts and opinions are things that we know a lot about. We know how to use them and we know what to do with them. But keep in mind that they can be kind of tricky. One word can change a fact into an opinion. So as you're reading your homework today, I'm going to really encourage you to make sure that you are reading every word carefully. Word choice matters, just like we've talked about in the past. So as always, if you need help with anything, you can send me a message, give me a call, remind, email, however you want to get a hold of me, and I will be happy to help you. All right, everyone, good luck with fact and opinion, and I'll see you next time.